I'm Sarah Wilson and you're listening to the Roots and All podcast. I'm here to help you get growing. Join me as I explore everything plant related both indoors and out and provide the information you need to create your perfect green environment. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. This week I'm talking to Vicki Cooke of Plant Heritage. Plant Heritage is a UK charity that works to conserve cultivated garden plants, predominantly through the National Plant Collection Scheme and their Plant Guardians initiative. Think national plant collections are the preserve of stately homes with huge gardens or horticultural institutions? Not at all. In fact, you could start your own on an allotment, in your greenhouse or porch. You could choose a genera with over 1,000 species or just one, and choose anything from trees to houseplants. All you need is a passion for a particular group of plants, and you can join the ranks of experts and plant fans helping to look after our cultivated plants for future generations. What is Plant Heritage and how long has it been running?
Right, so Plant Heritage is a charity that was set up in the late 70s, and it was set up in recognition that we've got this hugely diverse garden flora in the UK. For hundreds of years, we've been out collecting, breeding and growing plants in gardens. But there was no actual mechanism to make sure that we didn't lose plants, valuable plants, good plants, interesting plants. So Plant Heritage was set up as the NCCPG back in the late 70s to try and counteract the loss of good, valuable garden plants.
And actually, this is kind of going a bit off topic, but are there any that you've kind of lost or that we've lost that, people really feel, I wish we'd set that up sooner? Are there any real classic ones that you feel we've lost? I was just thinking about things like is it the Benton irises? They kind of got lost, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah, you get so many that are attached to a particular breeder or a person or an estate. And then if the house closed down or changes hands, and if no one looks after those varieties, then they will just get lost. And it's not just the varieties themselves. If the records about the varieties get lost, all of a sudden you don't really know what that is in your garden, and then effectively that is just as lost.
Yeah, there must have been some real losses. So you said you're a charity. You don't have to kind of go into too much detail, but do you get funded by a particular body, or is it kind of public funding?
So generally, we're entirely funded by our membership. We're a members charity, so people can join up, and we have local groups who do talks, activities, workshops, etc. They often will go and maybe help the national collections in doing some propagation work for them. It's a membership charity mostly.
So
also with a little bit of extra grant funding as well. So my position is funded by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, who's funded my position for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. So anyone listening needs to go and take up their membership.
Yeah, please join. Yes, it's a very knowledgeable charity with some very enthusiastic plants people in it. The conservation work we do is largely in gardens, so it is conservation by cultivation. And it is really just trying to keep our garden plants alive and growing in gardens, but also keeping the records of where they are and what they are growing. So, for example, the National Plant Collections is the flagship scheme that we manage. So the National Plant Collections really is our flagship conservation scheme. And the idea of the National Collections is that people will collect a certain group of plants, and they'll try and collect as many as they can of that group, and that will just stop us losing them from gardens. So you know that you've got a collection and a collection holder that is looking after a certain group of plants.
Mm-hmm. So I guess some people might listen and think, well, okay, we lose some older varieties, but there's new ones coming out all the time. Is there an argument against that, or is there a reason why we don't just get that kind of natural churn, and why we should be particularly worried about things that we're losing?
Yeah, there is an element of natural churn that will exist in cultivars, but a lot of the time, if you have particularly old cultivars, they'll have maybe a broader genetic base for the breeding of new cultivars. So new cultivars could be, they have a much more specific smaller gene pool to choose from. So sometimes going back to older cultivars, you can breed back in disease resistance or resistance to sort of maybe climatic change or certain colour traits that have been lost or dropped out of fashion. So there's an element that, yes, some cultivars will be superseded all the time, and actually it's generally a collection holder who is best placed to know that, because they will have all the plants in that plant group, and they'll say, oh yes, well actually that wasn't particularly good and that's been superseded by that. But because they've got all of the plants growing together, they can really sort of see and assess them at once and see which really is the valuable one.
Mm-hmm. So what are the national collections?
So the national collections are, there's 660 of them at the moment, and they are held in a huge variety of different institutions and locations, so ranging from botanic gardens and national trust houses down to private individuals, and some are held in back gardens or allotments, and I think there's one even that is in a couple of terrariums in a living room. So they can be in any shape or style depending on your facilities. And they are there to collect all the plants in a certain plant group. So the most simple way is, there's a collection of oaks that has 400 different species and cultivars of oaks from all around the world, as well as UK bred. There's also collections of like the miniature orchids, which are the ones held in a terrarium. So that is just a very small, a particularly small genus, and there's only a certain number of them, and they do just fit in a small space. So they can be quite broad in their definition. We also have collections that are tied to a particular place or person. So, for example, the Benton irises are all bred by Cedric Morris. So that is a very specific collection tied to a certain person.
Sorry, I'm going to jump all over the place because I'm actually quite excited about the thought of this. So if you've got a national collection, do you need to have every last cultivar within it?
No, we try and say as long as you've got a good broad representation of whatever you've got in that plant group. So, the idea is that for certain plant groups like hostas, say, I think there's about 5,000 registered hostas in the hosta registry. So we can break it up into smaller groups. So there might be hostas, UK introductions before 1990, or smaller miniature cultivars. Or bred by a certain person. So you can make it as manageable as you'd like, really.
Because I was thinking when so you mentioned the UK cultivated. Is there any overlap with overseas, or are there similar schemes overseas?
There are some similar schemes overseas. I think America has one. I think there's something similar in France. But I think Plant Heritage may have been the first and and certainly the largest or most comprehensive of them. But maybe don't quote me on that. But I think it was definitely the first.
Okay,
it was definitely the first.
And there's a thing on your website called the Missing Genera Project. Could you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so although we've got 660 collections of all different plant groups, there are still some really well-known plant groups that we don't have a collection of. And so this campaign is really to try and make people aware of that and maybe spark a bit of interest, that they think, oh, well, I actually really like that plant group. Maybe I could start a collection of it. So what we're hoping to do is really maybe just inspire someone to start a national plant collection and help in the conservation of our garden plants.
I had a look at it quite a while ago. I don't think I've got what it takes to have the organisational skills, if nothing else, for a national collection. But I did notice at the time I looked that hollyhocks didn't have a home, and I was really surprised about that. And I wondered if there were some, genera that people are genuinely surprised don't have a home. Are there any that kind of spring to mind?
Yeah, actually, hollyhocks, someone else was as surprised as you last year, and they have been inspired, and we're starting a collection which hopefully will get full status this September. So,
yay, brilliant.
So yes, watch this space. Hopefully we should have hollyhocks soon, which will be a stunning collection to go and visit.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
But this year, so our missing genera list for this year includes things like berberis. So although it's in pretty much every park and public space, there's no national collection of berberis. We've got 30 or 40 different species known to be grown in this country in a huge array of colours, the leaves as well as the berries. There's about 70 different cultivars available as well. But as yet, no national plant collection. So someone who doesn't mind their thorns would be well placed to take something like that on. Also, things like poppies, the oriental poppies particularly, I think would make an absolutely stunning national plant collection. We've got such a beautiful range of colours, and they're perennial as well, so you don't have to worry about reproducing them every year. So we'd love to see a poppy collection come forward.
Yeah, that's a surprising one, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long do you hold it for? And are you kind of inspected, or do you need records, annually? How does it actually work?
So once you've got a national collection and it's been accredited and everything, you basically hold it for as long as you want to hold it for. And ideally, when you realise that you can't hold it anymore, if you want to give it up, you'd find someone, a succession plan, so someone to pass it on to. So we've got a network of local volunteers, local coordinators, and there are boots on the ground, and they all go and visit collections in their county and just, find out how they're getting on, check they're all right, and have an eye at their plant list, etc., to make sure that their record keeping's up to date, etc. And yeah, that's it. Once you're a collection, you're there as a resource for the whole of UK horticulture, really. So you're often maybe called on to give advice on plant names, or if there are trials going on, a lot of our collection holders get involved in trialing of cultivars, and it's the knowledge that these collection holders hold inside their heads that is sort of one of the more phenomenal things about the National Collection Scheme, because we're such a nation of gardeners, but there are so many plant groups, no one can know everything about all plants. So having these specialists who've really studied their plant group, is such an invaluable resource for all of the rest of us gardeners.
So I was thinking, if people were searching on the missing genera list and then they saw one that wasn't already on it, I don't know, maybe they got a passion for something very obscure, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, could they come to you and say, I'm absolutely in love with this particular genus, can I start a national collection?
Yep, and that's how many of them have started. Is we'll get an inquiry, or a local coordinator will get an inquiry from someone who's interested in a particular plant group. And what we encourage them to do is first to put in a little proposal. So just outline what you'd like to collect before you start doing too much in the way of collecting. And we have an independent panel of plant experts who will look over these proposals. And if you've put something as broad as saying, all hostas, and they might suggest, well, perhaps you could start with ones introduced before 1990 or something, or ones for a certain region, and then expand it out. So just to make sure that you've got a good, kind of clear idea about what you should be collecting from the outset, and then we can support you through the process, with helping you to either source plants, or our local coordinators will help and come and visit and just check your site over, make sure everything's growing well, and then make a full application.
I was thinking I may inadvertently have the National Collection of willow herb, but I'm guessing
yes.
there are probably, are there limits to what you can have? Does it have to be something that's traditionally been cultivated for ornamental horticulture, or does it broaden out into kind of more wild species?
We do have some more wild species. I think there's a collection of, so we've got a collection of British double-flowered plants, so native plants that are naturally double-flowered. And there's a lady who's put in a proposal recently for a collection of native orchids that can be grown horticulturally. But generally it is plants you'd expect to see in a garden, or in a sort of glass house or garden environment. Yeah,
someone would have deliberately planted, not like my willow herb. Yeah.
No, there aren't, as so far, I don't think we've got any weed collections, although, I'd be interested if anyone does have a real passion for dandelions.
Well, to be honest, I guess with the interest in native flowers and wildflowers really, gaining prominence, I think perhaps somebody might approach you. You never know.
Well, actually, having said that, we've got some fantastic fern collections, and many of those are native wild ferns.
That's true.
So, yeah, we've got quite a good number of fern collections.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if someone came to you and said, I'd like to do ferns, and you said, actually, somebody's already doing the ferns, is there room for two?
Well, there is actually a lot of crossover. Yes, there's definitely room for two. In fact, we actually encourage two because, again, that gets you a good dialogue with another collector. Often it's quite useful to have someone that you can share ideas with or swap plants with, and especially if you're in different parts of the country, you can say how well something grows in the south as compared to the north. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in having more than one collection of a certain plant group.
Mm. So has interest in holding a national collection waned over time? And if so, what do you think the reasons for that are?
So I think there was a big push in the 80s and 90s to get the National Collection Scheme off the ground. And then I think it's been pretty stable since then. We've had about between 600 and 650 collections ever since then. Mm-hmm. And I think, if anything, we're seeing a slight maybe increase now in the last few years because we've had more flexibility now in how you can scope a collection, and it doesn't have to be, all of the oak trees or all of the hostas. And there's been more collections that are particularly tied to a place. So, for example, there's a collection at Nyman's Garden in Sussex of plants collected by Harold Comber, who's associated with the house. He's got history there. He went out around the world and collected plants and sent them back to Nyman's, and some of them are the original plants he's still got growing. Some of them will be now rare in the wild, or threatened perhaps in the wild. And that's another angle to the plant collections, is that, sometimes they are species rather than cultivars. Of interest sort of globally rather than just sort of UK bred. And so there's quite a lot of flexibility in what a collection can be. So I think that has sort of maybe opened people's eyes as to what a national plant collection could be. And we always see, maybe 20, 30 new collections each year, and perhaps a similar number will retire.
Well, that's encouraging. I didn't realise that you could do it kind of based on anything other than the genus. So, yeah, that, as you say, that's very eye-opening.
Yeah, I think that does give you a lot more. It can tie it to a place a lot more. So I used to work at Hampton Court Palace, and they had a collection of plants that Queen Mary had collected in the 1680s. They'd found her original list, and of course, being royal of the day, she was sending people all around the world collecting plants and had them in glass houses. And so they've got that as it's part of the building's history and the garden's history.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
As well as interesting horticulturally.
Who's got the most, do you know, off the top of your head?
Oh, gosh. It would probably be one of the cactus people.
Oh, right.
The cactus collections or a succulent collection, they tend to have thousands.
Oh, really?
I guess
wow.
Maybe they're quite small.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, some are going to be huge and some are going to be. Is there one with just one species? I can think probably of one example of a genus with one species, but.
Yeah, there's the metasequoias, but there's a few cultivars of the metasequoia, and I think they've also got ones that were collected from the wilds in different places from China, I think. So that gives it a bit more of a sort of conservation interest there as well.
And you mentioned terrariums as well in people's front rooms. Obviously, there has been a real surge in interest in houseplants recently, and I wondered if you've seen people taking on national collections of some of the non-hardy plants that are traditionally grown indoors.
Yeah, there's been a few that have come on recently. The top of my head, I think we've had peperomias and aspidistras and chlorophytums, also known as the spider plants. So yes, there is an increased interest in house plants, and it's amazing to see what diversity there is even in the aspidistras, which I think everyone has quite a fixed idea of what they look like, but they come in the most amazing spots and stripes that you wouldn't believe. So yes, there's quite a lot of diversity out there.
I bet the Monstera one's good. Has anyone got that?
Oh my gosh, no! There you go. That's a collection for you.
Yeah, I've got a variegated one, and that's my most exciting specimen. But yeah, there are so many. I'm sure someone's going to. They must be, champing at the bit. If anyone hears this, yeah, get on the case because that's a really great, fascinating.
Absolutely. absolutely. Yes, that would be a stunning one. I hope you've got a big house.
No, I haven't. And I'm watching it now, trying to escape the pot, and I'm thinking, I've no idea what I'm going to do with you. Probably just make more cuttings, which I have been doing. So if anyone's listening and they are interested in doing it, what do they do?
Well, please get in touch. The details are on our website, plantheritage.org.uk. And there's details on the website about how to start a collection, but we're always here for, one-to-one advice if you want to just give us a call or drop us an email, and have a think about what you're interested in, because that's what it comes from really, is like, what plant really sort of sparks your interest, and then work out how you could build a collection for it.
I bet you've got some really interesting people that you deal with.
Oh my gosh, it's fascinating. There is, as I said before, there is just so much knowledge and interest within the national collection holders that it's fascinating to just sort of spend an afternoon visiting a collection and meeting the collection holder.
Yeah,
one of the highlights of the job.
I bet. And actually, I had Jackie Curry on, who's the national collection holder of alliums, and the information that she imparted was groundbreaking. And I think I can't think of anyone who grows alliums who would even know a tenth of what she knows, and what she's saying is actually turning kind of received wisdom on its head because of her experience. So, and that's just one collection. So, and that's one person. So, as you say, it is such a resource of knowledge that it's invaluable. It's really, really important. So, thank you for doing the work.
That's all right. And it should be said, actually, that they are all open to the public. So that is one of the requirements of holding a collection, is that you are in some way open, even if it is, just by private appointment, so that people can view your collection, and you can talk to a collection holder directly or see it in a public garden.
That's interesting. Oh, so if you had, for example, monstera and you didn't have a greenhouse, or I don't know, a orangery, I'm wondering if there might be the potential in the future, given the current situation, to kind of view it online. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, we've had a few virtual tours that we've done of collections, since we're not able to visit them in person at the moment. And I think that would be a fantastic resource, because we did the hyacinth chap did a little quick virtual tour of his collection, and of course they only flower for a very few weeks in the spring, and then that's it. The whole collection is
underground.
Really anything to see, yeah, exactly. But by having a video tour, you've got that all year round to go and refer to, and you can't smell it, sadly. But.
No, that is true. Excellent.
So, we really encourage that as much as possible, really, because it is as much about a plant as it's about the knowledge and sharing the knowledge and the passion. If you don't have space for a national collection, but you want to get involved in garden plant conservation, you can always join up with Plant Heritage and become a plant guardian. So we have this scheme where members can adopt a rare plant and look after it, and we've then now got a registered and known location for that plant. So it stops us sort of losing it should it drop out of nursery catalogues.
That's interesting.
Or the like. So yes, there is a members plant conservation scheme called the Plant Guardians. So more details about that on the website. If you think you might have a rare plant in your garden, please get in touch, and we'll
that's so. So do you have to have the plant to start with, or?
Yes, you have to have the plant to start with. And if you have to be a member of Plant Heritage as well. But if you're a member, then we can research your plant and find out if it genuinely is rare and not available commercially and not in very many other locations. And if that is the case, then we'll give you a little special plant label to say this is a plant being kept safe by a plant guardian, and it'll be on our register of rare plants, because there are loads of plants that aren't in national plant collections. They don't cover every single cultivated plant in the UK. So this is a way of mopping up some of the excess and allowing members to get involved in a plant conservation scheme.
Thank you to Vicki Cooke for taking part in the interview. Links to Plant Heritage can be found in the show notes in case you want to jump on board and start your own national collection. And if that's a little bit ambitious, perhaps you could become a member. It's only £36 a year, and you would be helping to support some great work. Thank you for listening, and I'll leave you with Dr. Ian Bedford talking about something you're sure to have come across if you're partial to a good fall.
The common gooseberry sawfly can be a troublesome pest of gooseberry, red and whitecurrant bushes. In early spring, the adults, which have yellow bodies and black heads, emerge from pupae, having spent the winter months underground. They mate before the females fly off to lay their eggs on the underside of young leaves, usually within the centre of the bush and hidden from sight. The young larvae hatch and start voraciously feeding on the leaves, working their way upwards through the bush and defoliating the stems whilst they rapidly grow. After 2 to 3 weeks, these caterpillar-like larvae, which are green with black dots, are fully grown, and they descend down into the soil to pupate. If conditions are good, another 2 generations can occur before the end of the year. Controlling gooseberry sawfly in an environmentally friendly way is relatively easy if you keep a regular eye on the bushes. Disappearing leaves will indicate the location of the larvae, which can then be removed by hand. Regular turning over the soil around the base of the bushes will also help by exposing the sawfly pupae to insectivorous birds and other predators.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website www.rootsandall.co.uk, where you'll also find my blog and a sign-up form for the newsletter, which gives you a weekly roundup of content, plus the inside scoop on things like upcoming guests. Or you can subscribe wherever you normally get your podcasts. Email me with comments and feedback at podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. Follow me on Twitter, Roots and All, Facebook, Roots and All UK, and Instagram, Roots and All Pod. But please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support my work, because if you like what I do, please help me to continue doing it. Even if you make a one-off donation of £1, trust me, it all helps and I will be immensely grateful. So please go to Patreon and search for Roots and All.